My tea bag burst as I took it out the tea. I think there's no bits in it, but we will find out. Hello everyone and welcome to another video. My name is Lizzie. I hope that you are very well. October is here. I was about to say September is here. October is here. This is my September reading wrap up, but it's officially autumn. I've got my pumpkin mug. I've got my, it's not an Oodie because it's not a branded Oodie, but there's a cost of living crisis, a heating crisis. I'm gonna buy myself a new jumper. So I've got my new jumper on. We've got the autumn everything. Let's go. Let's go. September was a slower reading month than the last few have been. I read 7 books in September, which a few years ago would have been an enormous number, but at the moment is not that many compared to what I usually read. I did read some very long books, but every book I read was a good book. Everything got either 4 or 5 stars. So it's still a great reading month. It's still a great reading month. As you can hear, I'm full of cold. I've got a cough, hence my chamomile and honey tea here. So hopefully my voice will hold out for the video. And without any further ado, let's chat about the books. As always, there's a list of all the books in this video in the description with a little annotation as to how I acquired them. So the first book I read in September, which feels like so long since I read this book, because I vividly remember reading this on holiday. But I was on holiday for the summer in September. It just feels like so long ago. And that is Briefly a Delicious Life by Nell Stevens. I've been hearing a lot of buzz around this book recently. I think it just happens that a lot of the people I follow have read this recently, and as soon as it was announced ages ago, I was immediately excited to read it because it's historical fiction, it's queer, and it's got a classical music tie-in. I am a classical musician, so any classical music book I'm here for. The main character and the book who most of the perspective is from is a ghost who died aged 14, and she haunts this old abbey, this house where Chopin and his partner, his lover George Sands, are visiting with her children. And Blanca, the ghost, takes a bit of a shine to George Sands, to put it mildly. And we go through mostly Blanca's story, a little bit of George's story, and a teeny tiny bit of Chopin's story, and kind of explore their character and their past and their history and their secrets. The writing for this book was stunning. It was so beautiful and so lyrical, but it never felt like stodgy. It was never a chore to read it. You could just fly through it and just let all this amazing writing just kind of wash over you. It was beautifully written. It was such a joy to read it, and the way that the characters' kind of stories were revealed to you was so good. I will say, I love a character-driven book. This is definitely a character-driven book, but even in a character-driven book, even if nothing happens in terms of plot, something should happen in terms of like an arc, you know? There wasn't much of a resolution. There wasn't much of a like, this is the journey we're going on, and that would have made it 5 stars for me. I gave it 4, that would have made it 5. I'm body. Oh, that's so good. Then I read, and I'm going to try and get this whole title in one, Family Curse Field Notebooks by, no, that's not the full title. Family Curse Field Notebooks 1880 to 2020 by Tenacity Police. And this is a novella. It is horror, it is queer, it is fantasy, it is sci-fi, it's generational investigation, it's neurodivergence, it's so many things in this one short story, and it was brilliant, truly brilliant. The whole thing is written through diary entries, through research notes, through post-it notes and annotations, and we start off in modern-ish day with a character whose family have a history of going missing, of disappearing, and they are investigating this history and go through the past, looking at different ancestors of theirs and how they have also approached this history, this pattern of disappearances. And yeah, it was brilliant. Because it's very short, I don't want to go into too much detail about what happens, because I think you should just read it and experience it for yourself. But I was blown away by it. I was really enjoying it, loving it, and then I got to the end and I was like, you know when the end of a book just like basically punches you in the face? That was it. It was great. It was great. So good. So good. Then I read The Shadow Queen by Anne O'Brien. I've wanted to read a lot of Anne O'Brien's books. You can see quite a few of them. Where are they? Oh, they're just there. There on the shelf. There's a few. And this is the first one of hers that I've read. And it's a chunky one. It's about Joan of Kent, who was the first English princess of Wales. And, you know, it's very odd. I started reading this book at the start of September and, you know, was sort of marvelling in the history of it and seeing all of these rites and all of these things that happen when a monarch dies and a new monarch takes over, and, you know, the kind of creation of the Prince of Wales position and all of these political and monarchical, is that a word, machinations that are going on. And then I got to see it all happen in real life too. It was very strange. It was a bit weird to like have that happen in real life and be reading about it in a book. But yes, very much enjoyed this book. I had never heard of Joan of Kent before I picked up this book, and boy did she have a wild life. She had a wild life. So yeah, it was really interesting to kind of read about that period of history that I didn't know that much about the kind of mid 14th century, and what's going on there. I'm just looking through my reading journal notes to see what I wrote about this, and I put Joan was quite an enigmatic character, is how I described it. That I got to the end and I still wasn't sure I understood her and her motivations. That being said, for a woman at the time, then your motivation was usually to survive and to not be like exiled by your father or your husband. So the fact that she accomplished other things as well is impressive. I almost wanted more, even though, I mean, it was a long book, but it didn't feel like a long book. It kind of, you know, it didn't drag at all. It was good, well paced. But I got to the end just as her son became king, and you know, he was a child, and I kind of wanted to know more about what she was like as the mother of a king. I think that would have been sort of interesting. Maybe there's a sequel, who knows. But yes, very much enjoyed this. I'll be reading more Anne O'Brien very soon, I'm sure of it. Then I read The Boy Lost in the Maze by Joseph Cullo with illustrations by Kate Milner. Kate Milner illustrated it. This is a prose, not prose, the other one. My brain is such a cold fog right now. This is a free verse book that has kind of two storylines. So our modern day storyline is a teenage boy called Theo who goes on a mission to find his father and discover more about his past. And at the same time, he is working on a school project for English class about Theseus and the Minotaur, and how that story can be interpreted as Theseus looking for his father. And so the two stories, plus a little bit of the Minotaur story, are all blended together in this book. I thought it was brilliant. It was genius, fantastic, and just, I mean, it's stunning to read. I really enjoy reading fiction written in verse. I haven't read very much of it, but everything I have, I've loved. Also the illustrations, I'm going to find some for you. These are all the chapter headings. You've got these illustrations here, and then there are some alongside the text. So like here's another one alongside the text. So yes, gorgeous book. And also, see if I can find some. There's a choose your own adventure kind of vibe. Here we go. So like here, you have little bits of choose your own adventure, and they don't go very far. It doesn't change the overall plot of the book. You never get more than like one page before you either just carry on or it tells you to go back and start again. But it really just like hammers home those moments of, those pivotal moments of choice in someone's story and how important that is. And you get the sense that that character sat there going, well, if I do this, then this is going to happen, then this is going to happen. But if I do this, then this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and maybe that will happen. So yeah, I thought that really, really added to it. Overall, this was a really great book, a new YA release that I highly, highly recommend. Then I read What White People Can Do Next by Emma Dabiri. This was brilliant. As you can tell from the amount of tabs, there's a lot in this teeny tiny book. So much in there. I would highly, highly, highly recommend reading this. It's a sort of no holds barred, but also practical guide what to do next. And the core message is that individual actions, while great, will accomplish nothing if wider change does not happen, and how we can accomplish that wider change, and how we can accomplish that is by acknowledging that all of these divisions between ourselves are man-made, that we created them, and therefore we can dismantle them. I could sit here and try to summarise more of the other points in this, but really I think I should just say go read it, because it's not that long, it won't take you long, and it's brilliant, really, really great, and a really great addition to lots of the other books about kind of dismantling your own internalised racism and how you can help be an ally. This really disagrees with some points in those and builds on others and kind of gives a wider perspective to a lot of the conversations we've been having in the sort of public sphere over the last few years about racism. Then I listened to an audiobook. It was Wolfbane by Michelle Paver. Now, I loved these books when they first came out. So this is the final book in the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness series, and the first 6 came out like as a kind of complete-ish series when I was in my early teens, and I was obsessed with them. They were on my, like, you know, if you'd asked 12-year-old me what my favourite books were, that would have been on there along with like His Dark Materials and anything Anthony Horowitz has written. And she's written 3 more, and this is the final one of those 3 more, and the audiobook was narrated by Ian McKellen, which, you know, Ian McKellen, glorious, you know, it was always going to be good. I loved returning to the world and to the characters. It was such a like nostalgia trip, but also kind of weird in that obviously the characters have aged, that they're now adults who, even though they live in Neolithic Scandinavia, have very much the same problems that I have as an adult, and that was quite strange and jarring. The main issue, if you can call it that, is that Ian McKellen has a very soothing voice. And I listen to audiobooks in the car, so I couldn't really like engage with the story, because then I would just be like, you know, either peacefully absorbed into it or just nod off, and I was driving, so neither of those were an option. So I feel like I've got about 60% of the plot up in there, max, you know. So yeah, it was a nice nostalgia trip, even if don't quiz me on the final points of the plot anytime soon. And finally, I read my Tudor book for the month, and that is Anna of Cleves by Alison Weir, or rather, its full title, Anna of Cleves, Queen of Secrets. And so this is the 4th in the 6 Tudor Queens series, 1 book for each of Henry VIII's wives. As you can see, my TBR shelf, this one behind me, is getting smaller and smaller because we're now down to 2. I've got 2 left. I mean, this whole series is so great. I was very much looking forward to this one. Anne of Cleves is someone who's very rarely written about, and when she is written about, it tends to be in a very throwaway, almost sort of mocking way. But, you know, she played the game and won. She did. She, you know, was married off to a king in a foreign country, and when it didn't work out and all of her predecessors had just not come out of it well, she played the game and won. She got a load of cash, got a load of houses, and lived her best single life. Of course, it's more complicated than that, and there's a lot more to her and to her story than that, which is why I was excited to read this. The thing that I wouldn't say let it down, I did give it 4 stars. It's the first one in the series. I gave 4 stars rather than 5. There is a very controversial, probably fictional storyline. The author even says in the author's note, I know this will be controversial. And it's certainly, yeah, controversial is a good way to put it. And part of it is, with the previous 3 books, there's a lot of historical record about the lives of those 3 women, and it's not that hard to fill in the gaps and to kind of create this very complete story about them. But for the later wives, and perhaps especially Anna of Cleves, then not so much. You know, she was queen for less than a year. She never had any major scandals. She never caused any big international diplomatic incidents. She wasn't, you know, beheaded by her husband. There's a lot less about her and her life and her character that we know. So obviously a lot has to be fabricated to create a full novel about her life. The things that were fabricated definitely felt out there. And I will concede that, as Alison Weir says in the author's note, and boy does she write a good author's note, you know? I spent the whole thing being like, I can't wait to get to the author's note to find out what's true and what's not and what the evidence is. That she does say that, you know, her creation, her fictionalised things are not necessarily, you know, there's not much evidence to support them, but they don't fly in the face of the evidence, that the evidence does fit together neatly around the story she's created. I'm deliberately not telling you what it is because that would be a massive spoiler, but I might do, when I finish the series, I'm going to do a whole series review and I might fill it with spoilers. So yes, spoiler free for now, but not for long, I guess. I just kicked my tripod, so apologies if the frame is off. And that's it. Those are the books that I read in September. Let me know what you read in September, and I will see you next time. Ta-ra for now.